Hello, welcome to the Balisong Meet the Makers. I'm your host Chell Wong, and today we have Zippy. Zippy is known for his highly customizable inserts, as well as accessories such as bite handle indicators and end caps and spacers, as well as being a maker of the Balisong, such as the Cycloid 2.1 and the Cycloid HD. Thank you for coming on, Zippy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
I was talking to you, and I know that you got some balisongs to prepare, but I got every balisong that I currently have in my person that has your spacers or inserts, and right now I think it's 6. Though I
I
do
love
know
to
I
see
have
that.
at least another one out on temp trade that's currently being sent back, and there are a few bite handle markers, but
It's
yeah,
good. I was
I
going to
know.
say those are rookie numbers. You got to bump those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some things I'm like, I could see if I need a spacer for
Well, I'm
this.
I'm glad you like my product so much. Thanks for your support and for flipping Zippy.
Yeah,
It's awesome to see it.
I think what's pretty non-controversial is that you are pretty widely beloved in the community because your modifications, your spacers, and your inserts really help to adjust a lot of style songs that we like to like really fit our preferences. And so, like I actually specifically commissioned you to make inserts for my ultralight blade because I liked how it felt with the handles, but I wanted it to be neutral. And a lot of your blade inserts, here I have the glider Bermuda. I prefer the spacers in, but some people don't get the spacers. And the blade insert, as you can see, actually has a bunch of holes for tungsten ball bearings. And so with the stock spacers and the ball bearings all in, it's a good
That's
feeling
right.
for that too.
Yeah, the
So
Bermuda, by some measure, is kind of where it all began. It wasn't my first Balisong accessory, but it was the first blade insert, and everything kind of fell into place after the Bermuda.
that's wild because the
That was the
Bermuda
first
was
Balisong I purchased with the intent to make a weighted blade insert to change the balance.
it's
And
a good shape for that too because it's just one big hole.
yeah, that does make it easier. I
Yeah.
always appreciate when makers limit the number of cavities in the blade or handles. I'm like, perfect. I can go to sleep tonight.
Meanwhile, the Slight has like 8.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that slight is every time a slight order comes in, I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Gotta punch them all out. Um, I guess my first question to you is, how did you get your name? Because I assume Zippy is not your real name.
No, my name is David, and
That's
I
your
do.
nickname?
No, my name is David.
Oh, okay.
Zippy is my brand name, and a lot of people think my real name is David. So I make an effort to, sign my messages, my emails to the subscriber list with David, so people know I am David. But no, people call me Zippy too, and it's not a problem. But it's not my real name. The name Zippy came from the early days before Zippy Balisong was even a company. I was just another enthusiast on Reddit, and I decided to make my own balisong trainer with a 3D printer, as many people these days do. Back then, it wasn't so common. And the balisong I came up with, I put this sandwich pattern,
Sweet.
which kind of looks like a zipper.
Oh,
And so,
yeah.
so while I was developing this product, and I call it a product now, when I was developing this, I had no intent to sell it or distribute it in any way. I was just making it for me and my wife to futz around with. But I had made that sandwich pattern, which had never been done before. So I didn't. The only thing that came to mind when I looked at it was, oh, it looks like a zipper. So I just started calling this the zipper, and that's the name that ultimately stuck when I did decide to sell them because people wanted to buy them. And when I was explaining my new side hustle to my college roommate and my brother, sister, mom, and dad, I was, I guess you could say, like phonetically lazy in my speaking, and I started calling it the Zippy. because Zippy rolls off the tongue more. It was easier to say. It doesn't end in the hard R. So I was like, yeah, the Zippy. And I realized like that's just so much easier to say. It feels so much more natural. So I decided to call the brand Zippy Balisong. And it was thematic with the only product I offered at the time, which was the zipper. Of course, hindsight is 2020, and I didn't really think it through because when you say like the machine wise serif, awesome. When you say the zippy zipper,
Zippy zipper.
it's like ooh, not so good.
Oh
But
yeah, the
that is where
zippy
the name
zipper.
came from. It's derivative from the what the channwich pattern looks like.
It's also funny because when you're like the zippy zipper, Tay Flipper has the calico now, but the first ballad song he made is the Tay Flipper, so it's the Tay
That's
Flipper,
right.
Tay Flipper.
The Tay Flipper. Every time Brandon Baker says like the zippy zipper, inside I like part of me just died. I'm like, what have I done? I did this to myself.
So the zipper predated the like everything. That's like your first kind of actual ballad song related thing that you made, and
That's right.
that's why I actually didn't even realize that. I guess so. That was I was gonna get ask you about how you got into like making ballad songs, but you're known for your 3D printing, and I think it's. Would you say the 3D printing is a more accessible way of like making a ballad song compared to metal? I think that's pretty safe to say.
Sure. If your goal is to make a trainer, then yes. It's more accessible. It's less accessible if your goal is to market it and actually sell it and make like a production level quality. That's pretty challenging to do with a printer. And the margins aren't great either. So, being a ballad song maker is a labor of love. Any maker will tell you, no one's here to get rich. We do it because we're passionate about it. And doing plastic where the margins are even lower, it's a labor of love. So I would say it's accessible and that everyone can do it. But if your goal is to make a very functional, high quality ballad song with great tolerances, you've got some hurdles to overcome. It took me a while to get there. You're holding up the Cycloid HD, and that was, I guess, if my math is right, that was around 2 years of just my brain operating overtime to figure out, okay, how can I make the best plastic ballad song that I can make? But yeah, I mean, if for folks who want to design their own ballad songs, 3D printing offers a lot of advantages. The primary one would be rapid prototyping.
Much faster and much cheaper prototyping compared to like having to do aluminum or steel or not steel or titanium. But so your current designs, I think, as far as full ballad songs, are the Cycloid HD and the Cycloid 2.1. But I know that you obviously had previous versions of the Cycloid. Like I had a Cycloid 1.6. And admittedly, I was not super crazy about it. So when I got the HD, I was just like, oh my God, it blew my mind. But there's also the diode and of course the zipper. So I guess, what did you learn from those that influenced your process of designing and making the 2.1 and the HD?
Well, the first ballad song I made was the zipper, which started it all. And this had print-in-place weights in the blade. You can see them. So I stopped the print midway through, added tungsten weights, and then I also had all these bearings in the handles. And, of course, the Chanwich. The Chanwich design is something that I had always done from day one. There's a lot of advantages for doing a Chanwich design in a 3D printed ballad song. Namely, you can get better tolerances out of it because there's less thermal contraction in the z-axis than in the x and y axes. So if your goal is really good tolerances, Chanwich is the way to go. And so with the Cycloid 2.1, I basically took all the lessons learned from the zipper and the Cycloid. My evolution of thinking with the Cycloid and the zipper was, here's a Cycloid, here's a zipper. The Cycloid was basically take the principles that made the zipper good and simplify everything. Because the zipper, it was so many parts. It was so irritating to assemble each one. And ultimately what I found is that the ball bearing construction, the way I weighted that, while it felt nice while flipping, it wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be. And so the cycloid was simpler, and because there were no bearings in the handles, it was stronger. I kept the Chanwich, I kept my pivot system, and that was much faster to assemble. I think with the cycloid, I better applied the principles of DFM, or design for manufacturing, so I could make it faster and make it cheaper and offer it for a lower price for the customer. Now, the way the 1.6 came about is the materials I was using for both the cycloid and the zipper. Although I did a bunch of durability tests to them, I was never ultimately happy after seeing them out in the wild, seeing all the stresses that users would put them through, which it's hard to replicate in your garage, banging on things with a hammer or even chucking it at concrete. People will figure out ways to break your stuff that you never thought of.
People will chuck their knives, their grails onto concrete, and I don't get it.
Yeah. And so my attitude was, I don't want to keep making knives, because I think at that point I had a 5% warranty rate, and I was spending a lot of time dealing with, warranty, customer service, replacing cracked parts, and I wanted to get that number down. So with the cycloid 1.6 and the zipper V2, I went from PETG and these big bearings to a much stronger plastic ASA and these very small tungsten weights, which are embedded in the handle, which you can kind of see.
Oh.
And then likewise, actually, I don't have a cycloid 1.6 here, but with the 1.6, I also similarly replaced the handles with ASA. And this is a funny story because that's actually what led me to make my Balisong accessories, the weight caps, the slim caps. And that's kind of what started everything. But the bottom line is, when I switched to ASA, it's a stronger material, but it's less dense. And
Gotcha.
so when I made the switch, the Balisongs were stronger, but the balance and the weight changed a lot. And it always irked me. And so with this cycloid V2, I never made any zippers after the V2. There were some prototype V3s that never went into production. I kind of put all my focus into the cycloid platform. And what I did is I said, okay, well, how can I take a cycloid V1.6, which is stronger? They had polycarbonate blades and ASA handles rather than PETG, which I found to be very prone to breaking. And so I moved away from that material. With the V2.1, everything was, okay, how can I keep the strength but add weight? And so I can show you the first cycloid V2 prototype. Here's a V1. And the V1.6, which I don't have on hand, looks similar, but it was a polycarbonate blade with ASA handles. This is full PETG. This is the V2 prototype. ASA handles, polyurethane spacers, and a polycarbonate blade. So that was the prototype. You can see I hadn't even put my texture on it yet.
Oh yeah.
But ultimately I did something very similar when I made the final cycloid, which I can show you here.
The 2.1.
This was the V2 actually, before
Gotcha.
I even made the minor changes that were the 2.1. So you can see how the prototype evolved to the final version here. But
Gotcha.
the main things are, I changed the spacer geometry. I started making my spacers look nicer, and I kept the Chanwich design on the handles. But the big thing was I went from a polycarbonate blade to glass-filled nylon blades. And so by using glass-filled nylon, which is denser than ASA, actually is pretty similar in density to PETG, I was able to bring the weight back up, along with the polyurethane, which is also denser. So everything about the cycloid V2 was, how can I take a cycloid, V1 or V1.6, integrate the mods I had been doing in terms of blade inserts and spacers to give it adjustable balance, and also, bring the weight up into the realm I desired. And I always never lost sight of the principles of DFM, design for machining or manufacturing, really I wanted to make cycloids easy for me to assemble. And one of the ways I did that was to develop this hardwareless spacer system. So the cycloid V2 chainwich can be pulled apart very easily, and you can adjust the balance with a spacer directly. And then to reassemble it, you just jam it back in. It uses a dovetail detent system to lock into place. And the cycloid HD is similar. You have one, so I won't hold one up,
Yeah.
but it's this design. The handles are also glass-filled nylon, and it's channel instead of chainwich.
Yes.
And
So
that added,
the spacers, I believe there's like 3 like tungsten discs and 2 tungsten ball spaces. So like, and I think you said one disc was worth like 3 balls, I think.
that's correct.
So like you can get with just 2 balls and 3 discs, you can get a really, really specific weight distribution in each of these spacers. And also I love that because you don't actually need to like disassemble this in order to like I love Machine Wise, but obviously with the Seraph, if you want to like fiddle around with the your weights, you have to disassemble the handles, or maybe apply a little bit more of that splitting kind of motion, which you probably shouldn't do. And that's the less obvious one compared to obviously like how many balls do you want in the blade.
I agree. I really wanted to make the cycloid easy to manipulate the balance, easier for me to manufacture so I could keep the price low, easy to change the balance so everyone could fit their preferences.
I guess one thing I want to know is possibly what was something that influenced your designs for Balisongs? I know that you were talking about like the ease of assembly, but I guess also maybe more in the design philosophy of like how things look, or like how you came up with all of this hyper customizable feels of things. I would assume, because like when I think of Zippy products, I think about like the ability to really customize your own battle songs as well as several others. Like here I have the heaviest Lucha, which has both of your blade inserts, as well as these spacers, which are so much more comfortable than the stock handles. And each of these spacers have maximum number tungsten weights. It's not a good flipper, but it is a customizability thing. So I guess where did that like influence come from, and how did you come with that?
So you're asking like how did I settle on my design philosophy? Or I don't know, it's for how I settled on it, I'd say I don't know, it's sort of integrated into how I see the world, how I see things fit together. It was probably influenced by maybe assembling 3D printers, modifying 3D printers. Also, it's inherently influenced by the other Balisongs I flip from other makers. Little bits and pieces of things that I like from other Balisongs may find their way into my own designs. I think that's inevitable with everything, with any maker. Anyone making Balisongs or parts will have that. So, for example, the Jimpy Space Invaders for the Benchmade 51. That would be the clear example. Jimpy innovated the handle extensions, and then I took that idea, which I thought was great, and I applied it to a number of different Balisongs. In fact, I think the first Balisong I extended was the Replicant. Yeah,
Makes sense.
the first Balisong I extended was the Replicant. Here are the half extensions, but I have longer extensions. I call them the full-length extensions, which is a bit of a misnomer. But the longer extensions as well. There's other things too. I mean, with the Bermuda insert, which was the first blade insert I did, that's kind of what started it all in terms of making blade inserts to customize the balance. I saw the Bermuda, and I saw the specs, and I knew it was going to be super handle biased.
It's gonna be a
And
funky
so
little
I
guy.
bought one. Yeah, that was the first Balisong I acquired with fully with the intent to make a modification for it. And now you can see, those blade inserts and extension spacers showing up in my own designs. I think they offer a lot of advantages. The extension spacers in particular are a nice way to protect the handles from drops. And
That's true.
the inserts, they offer a lot of customization. So I've always been a guy who likes customizing things to my liking. Growing up when I was playing, video games, I liked games like Diablo 2, where I could customize my character to however I wanted. Which battle axe did I want to hold? Which armor? What abilities did I want? And that type of customization, it's in everything in my life. I like personalizing things, and I also get a great deal of satisfaction from bringing the ability to personalize and customize to anyone in the hobby because it's fun.
It is really fun. And even battle songs that don't have any sort of like inserts or whatever, or like, spacers that you've made, you have regular end caps that you can do to just protect your ends. Like I got this used, and there's a wee bit of scuffing. Someone dropped it once or twice, and so you could put these on to protect it, or whatever, or use it as a bite handle indicator if you want. But you also have weight caps. I know that if you want to make things like more handle bias,
Yeah.
so that's an option that I think is great too. I guess a question I have is like, is there anything like on the horizon, anything new, or any like things that you may have learned from the 2.1 or the HD that you might do in the future?
Yeah, there is some stuff on the horizon. Some of it I can't really talk about because I'm not a
Totally
guy who
understandable.
counts my chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of ongoing projects that I'm working on, but until they're more mature, I won't know if they'll ever see fruition or what form they'll take. There's a lot of pies in the oven right now that are still in the very early phase of development or even middle phase of development. But for me, my method of working is a lot of trial and error, punctuated. It's like very incremental changes, changing one variable at a time, punctuated by eureka moments where I go to sleep and I wake up and I figured out the problem I'm solving. So I don't want to be specific because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but I'll say one of the things. So like in terms of what I've like learned, it would be cool. I don't have a timeline for this. This is probably very far future, but possibly integrating some type of inlays into a Cycloid HD platform, like handle inlays. Possibly offering different spacer lengths for the Cycloid platform. People have been asking me for a very long time, Zippy, when will you make a metal balisong? When will you make a live blade?
Will you ever?
And sorry?
Will you ever actually? Because I'm curious. Because I know you have the Z Lucho, which technically is not like a blade that you made, but plastic
Yes.
handles on a metal blade. I've not tried it. I've heard good things.
I recommend everyone try it. So far it has surprised everyone, and it's a pleasant surprise. It's fun. It's not a heavy duty work knife, but it's a competent flipper, and it's tons of fun. It's got great tolerances. Will I ever make a metal balisong or a live blade? The answer is yes. In fact, the first balisong I ever made was a metal balisong.
Really? I mean, like before the zipper?
Yeah. Well, when did I make the zipper? Is that like, must have been 2021. The first balisong I made was in March of 2013. Actually, no. The first balisong I made was super janky. I think that was 2007.
So you've been flipping for a long time, huh?
Yeah, although flipping back then is not what in 2007. If you could do a rollover on camera and then make eye contact with the camera, you were a badass.
Yeah, that was like the day of like when the 42 was the peak of flipping.
In 2007, I was like, check out this basic open, and if you could do like a fan flourish, everyone's like, nice, dude. Yeah. Rollovers were like, they're like combos were different back then. It was a much more rollover based style. But the bottom line is, I was flipping in 2007. I was basic opening, right? The hobby has changed a lot in terms of what the flipping meta is in the style. But no, the first balisong I made, I think it was like 2007. I was working at my local hardware store at the time, so I was able to get a discount on some of the aluminum stock. But it was a sandwich aluminum trainer with an aluminum blade and aluminum handles, and it's like nothing. I don't have it anymore. I think my mom gave it away at some point.
That's a shame.
Or threw it out probably. And then but I had always loved Balisong since I got my first one in 2006. But I always like making things too. I like to work with my hands. I like to make stuff. Always have, always will. The first real like metal Balisong I made, not just like janky in the workshop with like a saw cutting aluminum stock.
A saw? Oh my god.
That was March of 2013. I actually have it here. I'm afraid to show it on camera though, because I'm afraid to get
Please,
cyberbullied because of it.
please show it. Wait, how old was this product? Like
It
2013?
was never a product.
All right.
I made
How old
it for
was this
myself.
Balisong that you made?
2015, so I guess it's 11 years now.
Okay, yeah. Please show it. I really want to see.
All right, but if my DMs
I will
are full
fight
of people,
all of the bullies.
if my DMs are full of people cyberbullying me, I will have a bone to pick with you. But yeah.
No.
So this is the knife.
Whoa! Oh my god, that's so cool.
It's channel aluminum 6061. I don't know when the first channel aluminum Balisong was ever made. Probably around the 2013, 2014 timeline, or maybe earlier. I don't know. This maybe was one of the earlier ones. I never posted it online. At that time, I was lurking on Jersey Devil. I didn't even have an account. But this is it. If you open it, this is where people are going to make fun of me. So when I made this, yeah, it's actually a magnetic latch.
What? No way.
Yeah.
Can I borrow that sometime?
Well, I don't know. I'm too embarrassed. It's on IKBS bearings too. I don't think the camera will pick it up. But so this is I was flying blind, like I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah,
so
I mean, like we've seen the Delta
IKBS
4.
Sorry?
Like Machine Wise has shown like his first ever Balisongs and how they're so chunky and a little weird.
Yeah, this is chunky. I think it's 1/2 inch thick, but it's kind of wide. I mean, the handles have this curved pattern. It's obviously not a flipper. It wasn't made to be a flipper. I was living in Rhode Island at the time, so I made this with a 3-inch blade to comply with the Rhode Island knife law.
Yes,
and that's why it's so stubby. The blade's 440C. It's pinsless, so it has a Zen pin. It has a Zen pin.
Wow.
But the Zen pin abuts the handle here. So I was flying blind. I didn't understand the difference in material hardness at the time. So I have, chrome steel bearings riding on aluminum, a 440C hardened blade hitting an aluminum channel. So the whole thing's a mess, and I never made any more of them. But it was a fun project, and yeah, it was 11 years ago now, which is wild. And it was a very long time. It was obviously like 7 or 8 years until I decided to make another Balisong.
Yeah, and I mean, you've come a long way. Like, again, just the jump from the Cycloid 1.6 to me, not throwing any shade. It felt kind of spongy, and like I loved your inserts, but I was like, I don't know how I feel about the Cycloid 1.6, but the Cycloid HD is, in my opinion, the best plastic Balisong clipping experience. It has a good weight to it, and it's again, you can customize how much handle weight, how much handle weight at the end, at the ass, how much blade weight you want. Like, you could literally make this to your own, like, whatever you want. And so, like, I don't think anyone's gonna fault you for, like, yeah, again, flying blind. So many people making Balisongs back in the day, and even like early on, like the Nabali's, like the Nabali's maker competition where people have been submitting their designs. A lot of those people are flying blind, and it takes a lot of guts to make a design and submit it. But like, there's so much trial and error, and like this Balisong is so good. It's also interesting because I was like, oh, it's not pinsless anymore. It's got tang pins even that's like printed on. But like, holy shit, do you have a name for that magnetic one?
The magnetic
I want to borrow it so badly. Please let me borrow it.
I think I never formally named it, but I believe in my files, I'd have to check in my files. I believe I named it Strike Slip. And in fact, I had the geologic, like, fault line strike slip symbol engraved into it.
Please let me borrow the strike slip.
That was going to be my logo. If this was good, I was going to try and sell them. I was going to try and make a bunch and sell them on Jersey Devil or something. But it was so bad that I never made more than one. Or actually, this is the second prototype. The other prototype is just in parts in my garage.
Sure.
But that one was even worse. So, and the bar here is pretty low, so you can only imagine.
Knowing like where you've come from and how far you've come, I am so curious what a metal balisong and a live blade balisong, like, or both, like whether it's aluminum or titanium. I am so curious how it's gonna look, and I know that also, like with bandage knives, you have the spacers and like the inserts as part of it. Well, I don't know about the inserts in the handles, but like the spacers are a part of the bandage knives experience. Oh, okay, and the inlays, because I know you can buy like other ones, but it's probably just like for other colors. So I assume that if you made a live blade of your own, you would probably, or like a metal balisong, you probably have custom spacers like that too, right? Or not?
Probably,
Okay.
yeah. I don't want to promise anything.
That's true, yeah.
And I'll say, a metal balisong is probably closer than it's ever been for Zippy. As far as how it looks and how it's built, well, I think I've done a good job in making all of my balisongs unique. Unique in terms of their construction. For example, the Cycloid HD has that channel construction with a cavity to hold spacers at the end. The spacers don't even need hardware. You can adjust the balance without any hardware. So I think my design philosophy, which there's going to be some people who watch this and laugh at what I say next and disagree, but in my own eyes, it's like simplicity and functionality. In some ways, function over form. You can see that with the pivot system that I implement and the hardware that I use. But also, in terms of the functionality, there's a certain elegance to it. In the Cycloid HD's case, it would be the spacers that are removable without hardware. And so all of those elements would be and will be present in whatever metal balisong or live blade that I cook up. But another important aspect to me is there's so many balisongs in the market right now. You hear the term like saturated a lot. The market is saturated. And I'm not a data guy, and I'm not a business person either. I'm just I'm just me. So I don't want to just say that explicitly, but there's a lot of balisongs in the market right now, and you can close your eyes for 2 weeks, go back on Instagram or Reddit, and boom, there's a new balisong. And when I make a live blade, I want it to be unique, and I want it to stand on its own. I don't want it to be necessarily comparable to anything else. My attitude being like, I don't want to make a knife that's already been made,
Yeah.
I want whatever knife I have to have its own unique value proposition. I don't want people to buy it just because it has a cool new hole pattern, right? It needs to have some type of function and elegance that has not been done before. So I don't want to overhype anything because it's still very early in the process and ideas fail all the time. I think my idea success rate is probably like 10%. I try a lot of stuff and not all of it works out. But what you see is the cream that rises to the top. But the bottom line is I don't want to make a cool new hole pattern. It's going to be something different and unique, and it's going to be functional and have its own brand of elegance in terms of how that functionality works. If you look at how the Cycloid HD has evolved from even the Zipper V1, that evolution is going to continue. It's hard to predict from your shoes right now, like what that will look like. But once it happens, with hindsight, you'll say, "Oh, this is the perfectly natural evolution." So
I'm so excited to see what that would be, because
yeah,
I love your products.
I wish I could say more, but I don't count my chickens before they hatch. It's too early to say, and I don't want to overhype it. It's too early to say. But I'm hoping that I can bring something to the table that I'm proud of and that's unique, and that people will have a ton of fun to flip and cut their boxes with, and hopefully not their fingers.
I guess I have a few questions. I know we are like sort of somewhat long. I don't know how much time you have, but like
it's a Friday afternoon.
Hey, all right. So one question I have is, What would you say is a little known difficulty about your process of making balisongs? Because
Ooh.
yeah, a lot of people feel like they know more than they actually do, and I feel like once you actually start trying to like make something, you realize how hard things can be. But what's a little known difficulty about your process?
I do everything. I don't calculate my balances, and I do everything by trial and error. I've there are a lot of folks will calculate center of gravity in their CAD files and choose the balance off that. And I've done that before, but I've never been like totally happy with the results because the center of gravity is a it's a simple and effective way to represent the weight distribution, but it is also a simple way to represent the weight distribution. And so you never kind of really know how it's going to flip until you hold it. So I actually don't even bother calculating the center of mass. I do everything by very incremental iteration, trial and error. So for example, with like the cycloid HD or the cycloid or any of my spacers even or blade inserts, I just make new versions over and over and over until the tolerances fit and finish and balance are where I like them. So it's not uncommon, if I'm making spacers for a knife, my desk might just be piled with 100 prototypes that then get
Wow.
thrown in the trash. The cycloids, I mean, I hate to talk about how much plastic I waste. There's going to be a lot of angry sea turtles watching this YouTube video.
Oh no.
But yeah, my style is lots of trial and error and incremental iteration. And that is not inherently difficult. You just need patience. The key is don't cut corners. Don't take a shortcut. Like, what's your favorite meal that you cook? Like, if you were to make yourself dinner.
I mean, I don't know my favorite, but last night I did some raviolis with caramelized onion and spinach, or no, caramelized onions and bell peppers.
Okay,
That's
was
what I
there
did
a
last night.
sauce? Was there a sauce in that?
I did add some balsamic glaze. I would not say this is my favorite. This is actually the first time I've done this combination, but
Okay. Well, what if you didn't have balsamic glaze, but you had distilled vinegar? And you were like, oh, balsamic vinegar, it's close enough. I'm going to make this recipe with vinegar because that's what I have available to me. It'll make it faster. I don't have to run to the store to get balsamic vinegar. That will get you a finished product. It might even be an 80% solution. You might get lucky, and that might be your new favorite food. Who knows? But if it was your favorite recipe and you made it without that ingredient, it would no longer be your favorite recipe. It would be something else. So for me, I don't actually calculate the balances ahead of time. I just tinker and make very small changes, and I try a whole number of things. It's like pinning the tail on the donkey. I'm just pinning tails everywhere and seeing what I like the best. And I might have some vision ahead of time of like, okay, where do I think it's going to be? I'm not trying the wackiest things all the time. Sometimes for fun, but it's kind of like that analogy with food, which might not be the most elegant analogy, but you can kind of see where I'm going with it, which is I'm not going to just do the first thing that comes up and, oh, this is good enough. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to get the actual ingredient I want, and I'm going to test it until it's perfect. I'm going to find what I think is perfect, and then I'm going to test something above and below that. And that might shift what my new perfect is, or I might say, okay, this is actually perfect. If I go one more, I don't like it. If I go one less, I also don't like it. So it's just about finding like the perfect balance.
is that also for like the inserts as well? Like,
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
The inserts, it's a balancing act between how heavy they are and the friction fit, how easy they are to put in, and how secure they are. Can they withstand concrete drops? How heavy do I need to make them, or light do I need to make them? Every balisong has its own personality and weight distribution, balance profile, what have you. And so I can't just apply the same equation to every balisong. One balisong, lighter inserts might be really good, but another balisong, well, maybe it's a little blade bias, it needs heavier inserts. So
So
everything
yeah.
is case by case basis, treating everything in a vacuum. I picked up some lessons learned along the way about how I can improve the quality, surface finish, fit and finish, and I apply those. But when it comes to like how things feel and look, there's a lot of unique things I'll apply to different problem sets, different Balisongs that need a different solution.
So like you might look at these and be like, oh, it's just a regular hole and make like an oval, but like behind every single one of your products is a mountain of prototypes and trial and error, huh?
Yes, and
That's
some
wild.
more than others. I mean, when you get
Oh, I'm
sort of
sure.
simpler geometries, that makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah, like you have
When
this
the
one, but
tolerances of the knife itself are made to higher tolerances, uh,
oh
better
right.
better tolerances, that makes my life a lot easier too. Because you know, a lot of people have this idea that if you machine something, it comes out perfectly. If you take calipers to it, if you put in machine 8 millimeters, you take calipers, you get out 8 millimeters. That's not how it works. It's feeds and speeds, baby. So
Whew.
working around tolerances on different knives too is a challenge. That has a huge effect on how I design things. I can put an insert in one handle and it may fit differently in another handle. So I'm not only working to accommodate the knife's tolerances, but my own tolerances on my machines, the thermal contraction that I deal with. So that, I guess, that would maybe be a second thing that would be like a hidden challenge, a challenge that most people might not think about, um, meshing up those two different tolerances.
I never even thought about considering the inconsistencies of the Balisongs that you're making modifications for. Like that's
Yeah,
got to be
that's
really difficult
why
to account for.
that's why I don't actually design things purely off a CAD file. I've had makers be like, "Hey, can you make blade inserts or inserts from my knife? I'll send you the CAD files." And I always insist, like, "Yeah, you can send over the CAD files. Cool starting point, but like, I will need the knife or at least the handles or blade in hand to prototype because I have to deal with your machine tolerances, my machine tolerances. I have to
For
make sure
sure.
everything fits perfectly."
All right. I guess my last question is there anything you would like to tell our listeners, like any final thoughts or information or anything?
I'm beyond flattered and excited that you guys are watching this. You're interested in it enough in the goings on of Zippy Balisong and Shell's Balisong journey to watch this. I'm flattered. Thanks for your support. Um, I love having you guys in my corner. The support of this community is unbelievable. I think if you had told me what my life would look like a few years ago, I would not have believed you. And I'm lucky to count a large number of the community as friends or customers or both. And I'm glad that we're in this hobby together. It's a ton of fun. And thanks for having me. I hope I said something that was mildly entertaining, but I appreciate you taking the time.
I'm honored that you showed me this knife that you've literally never showed anyone else. That's really cool to be able to see. Um,
I've shown it to a very small handful of people that have been sworn to secrecy because it's not a knife that it's not easy to be proud of an
I think
abomination.
it looks really cool, and I still would love to borrow it. By the way, like, please.
I don't know. I
Um,
think you would think less of me once you held it in your hand and felt the
no, no,
tolerances. Just
I'm
imagine chrome steel bearings and a heat treated blade. What that does to 6061 aluminum. Let your imagination run wild.
I still
However
want to try.
bad you think it is, it's worse.
I have like I'm the kind of person that when I try a shitty Amazon Balisong, I still find the good merits of it and be like, this is like weird or maybe not good, but like I still like to see like I'm a pretty optimistic and positive person, I'd like to say, and just looking at that from like an 11-year-old design, like, and yeah, obviously there may be some things that are objectively wrong in the construction, but like I still want to try it. It looks so cool. It looks so
Well,
funky.
maybe if you're at Blade Show East,
Ah.
we can go in the hallway. I can sneak it your way.
I don't know if I'll go to Blade Show anytime soon, but my roommate's from Atlanta, so maybe in the future. Uh, but with that, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Balisong Meet the Makers. Like and subscribe for more. And Zippy, where can our listeners find more from you, and where can they get your products?
Primary place to get my products is my website, zippybalisong.com, zippybalisong.com. I also have an Instagram account where I post updates at Zippy Balisong, but the fastest and most comprehensive updates can be achieved by subscribing to my newsletter on the website. And for folks who are not part of the Balisong community on Reddit, I do post there pretty frequently, and I also just look at other people's posts. So that's where you can find me.
All right. And with that, see you next time, and happy flipping, everyone. Thank you so much, Zippy.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. Peace.